The last echo of the crowd died an hour ago. Now, the only sound was the wind, a high, thin whistle through the empty stadium struts. It was a lonely sound, a sound that gets into your bones. My breath plumed in the cold air, white against the deepening twilight. The stadium lights cast long, distorted shadows across the rows of vacant seats. Thousands of them, all empty. Just like the space next to me on the concrete bench where my son was supposed to be. They forgot me. The thought didn't land with a crash. It arrived quietly, like a feather settling on snow. It had been circling for a while, I suppose. For the last 45 minutes, to be precise. At first, it was easy to explain away. Traffic after a big game is always a nightmare. Mark had probably gotten turned around in the parking lot. A vast sea of asphalt and metal. Karen was likely trying to wrangle the kids, Leo and his younger sister, keeping them from getting lost or cranky. I told myself these things. I recited them like a prayer. They are busy. They have a lot on their minds. I am patient. I have always been patient. I pulled my jacket tighter. It was a good jacket, but it wasn't made for a long, motionless wait in the November chill. My knees ached. A familiar, dull throb that came with the cold and the damp. A souvenir from a long-ago war in a jungle far away. I checked my watch. The old Waltham my father gave me. The leather strap was worn smooth, dark with the oil from my skin. 7:30. The game ended at 6. I pulled out my phone. A simple flip phone. Mark had tried to get me one of those smart ones, the little glass rectangle he was always staring at. He said it was for my own good, to stay connected. I told him I was connected just fine. He'd sighed, that familiar, weary sigh that said I was being difficult, that I was old-fashioned. The screen glowed. I scrolled to his name. Mark. I pressed the call button. It rang, and rang, and rang. Straight to voicemail. Hey, you've reached Mark. Leave a message, the same cheerful, detached recording I'd heard 1,000 times. I didn't leave a message. What would I say? Son, you appear to have misplaced your father. A cleaning crew started moving through the upper deck, their movements slow and methodical under the harsh lights. The rustle of their plastic bags was the only other sound. They were ghosts in a concrete shell. I felt like one of them. I tried Karen's number. Same result. Voicemail. The cold was starting to feel personal. It wasn't just weather anymore. It was a statement. It seeped through the layers of my clothes, through my skin, and settled deep in my chest. A cold, heavy weight. I thought about Eleanor, my wife. She never would have forgotten me. She would have been standing right here, complaining about the cold, her arm linked through mine. She would have made a joke about Mark's terrible sense of direction. And we would have been cold, but we would have been cold together. But Eleanor was gone. 10 years now. The space she left had never quite filled. It was just quieter, colder. A security guard ambled by, his keys jingling at his belt. A young man, face still soft with youth. He saw me, and his pace slowed. Everything all right, sir? Stadium's closed, my ride, I said. My voice sounded rusty. They seem to be running late. He looked at me, a flicker of pity in his eyes. I hated that look. I'd seen it more and more lately. The look people give old men sitting alone on benches. You got a way to call them? I held to my phone. No answer, he nodded slowly. Look, I can't let you stay here. Security risk. I can call you a cab if you want, or give you a lift to the main gate. Might be easier to get one from there, a cab. From the stadium to my house on the other side of town. It would cost a fortune. A small, bitter part of me thought, good. Mark can pay for it. A ride to the gate would be fine, I said. My pride wouldn't let me accept more. I could handle it from there. I had always handled it. The walk to his golf cart was long. Each step was a negotiation between my stiff joints and the cold concrete. He didn't rush me. For that, I was grateful. The ride was silent. The little electric motor whined. We passed under the bleachers, a cavern of steel and shadow. I used to bring Mark to games here when he was a boy. I'd buy him a hot dog and a Coke so big he had to hold it with 2 hands. His face would be sticky with mustard and sugar. He'd look up at me with wide, happy eyes. Where did that boy go? When did he become a man who could drive away from a stadium and not realize he was one father short? At the main gate, the guard pointed me toward the taxi stand. It was empty. Of course it was. One will be along eventually, he said, trying to be helpful. I nodded. Thank you. He drove off, and I was alone again. Just me and the hum of the highway in the distance. I stood there for another 20 minutes, my thumb starting to feel numb, before a yellow cab finally pulled over. The ride home was expensive, just as I'd figured. The driver was a talker. He asked about the game. I told him our team won. He seemed happy about that. He didn't notice that I wasn't. When we pulled up to my house, the place was dark. No car in the driveway. A single porch light cast a weak, yellow circle on the lawn I had meticulously mowed 2 days before. They weren't here. They hadn't even come here first. They had driven all the way across town to their own home. A 40-minute drive. 40 minutes without noticing I was gone. I paid the driver, adding a generous tip. It wasn't his fault. I walked up the path, the familiar crunch of gravel under my shoes. I unlocked the front door. The house was cold, silent. It smelled of lemon polish and old books. It smelled like my life. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked through the dark living room, my hand trailing along the back of the sofa. I went to the kitchen and stood before the sink, looking out the window at the dark backyard. The phone rang. It was jarring in the silence. Loud, demanding. I walked over and picked up the receiver of the old kitchen phone, the one with the long, coiled cord. Hello. Dad. Oh my God, Dad, are you okay? It was Mark. His voice was a jumble of panic and relief. I'm home, I said. Jesus. We got all the way home. Karen was putting Maya to bed and asked where you were, and I thought you were in the back with Leo. Dad, I am so sorry. We just got talking about the game, and the traffic was insane, and he kept talking. A flood of excuses. A river of them. I didn't say anything. I just listened, and then I heard it. In the background, before she realized he was talking to me, I heard Karen's voice. Not panicked. Not worried. Oh, for crying out loud. Mark, did you get him? Tell him we're sorry. And then a sound that broke something inside me. A little laugh. A dismissive, exasperated puff of air. He's probably milking this for all it's worth. There was a fumbling sound. Mark must have covered the phone. When he came back on, his voice was strained. Dad? Dad, listen. I didn't want to listen anymore. I had heard everything I needed to hear. I'm home, Mark, I said again. My voice was flat, devoid of everything. We can come get you. Oh, wait, you're home. How'd you get home? I managed, I said. Look, we feel terrible. Just awful. We'll come over first thing in the morning. Okay? We'll bring coffee. They would bring coffee. As if a paper cup of lukewarm coffee could patch the hole they had just blown through the hull of our family. Don't bother, I said, and I hung up the phone. I placed the receiver back in its cradle. Gently, deliberately. The click was the loudest sound I had ever heard. My hands were not trembling. Not all. They were perfectly steady. I stood there in the silent kitchen for a long time. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to grow louder, filling the space left by the phone call. The old mantel clock in the living room ticked, each second falling like a drop of water into a deep well. Tick, tock. This is what it comes to, I thought. You build a life. You raise a son. You give everything you have. And you end up an inconvenience. An afterthought whose absence is only noticed when it's time for bed. Something to be milked. I walked over to the coffee maker. Every night for the last 10 years, since Eleanor died, I've prepared it for the morning. I'd measure out the grounds, fill the reservoir with water, set the timer. It was a ritual, a small, steady anchor in the quiet tide of my days. Tonight, I did not do that. I opened a new bag of beans, the dark, oily kind I liked. The kind Karen always said was too strong and bad for my blood pressure. I ground just enough for 1 cup. The whir of the grinder was a violent, satisfying sound in the stillness. I didn't use the automatic machine. I pulled out the old percolator from the back of the cabinet, the one my father used at his fishing cabin. It was a slow, deliberate process. You had to watch it. You had to listen for the right rhythm, the gentle bubbling. I stood at the stove and waited. The smell of the coffee began to fill the kitchen. It was a rich, dark, uncompromising smell. It was the smell of my own damn coffee in my own damn house. When it was done, I poured it into a thick ceramic mug. Black. No sugar, no cream. I carried it into the living room. I sat down on my chair. The old leather one. The one with the cracks and the worn spots that fit the shape of my body perfectly. Eleanor had always called it that monstrosity. She tried to get me to throw it out a dozen times. I never would. It was my chair. I took a sip of the coffee. It was hot. It was strong. It burned a clean path all the way down. And in the warmth and the bitterness of that single cup of coffee, a decision was made. It wasn't a hot, angry decision. It was cold and clear like a pane of glass. It wasn't about revenge. Revenge was a fool's game. It was about balance. It was about setting a ledger straight. For years, I had been a resource, a free handyman for Mark's endless home improvement projects, a reliable babysitter when they wanted a weekend away, a silent, open wallet for a loan that was never meant to be repaid. I remember the barbecue last summer. I had brought my own special sauce, the one I'd been making for 40 years. Mark had laughed. "Dad, nobody wants that smoky stuff anymore. Karen got this amazing artisanal chipotle mango glaze." He'd pushed my jar to the back of the table. I found it there at the end of the night, unopened. I remember my 70th birthday. They planned a surprise party, except they planned it for the wrong weekend. When I pointed it out, Karen had sighed and said it was too late to change the invitations, and could I just pretend my birthday was a week later? So I did. I sat at my own party a week after my own birthday and smiled as everyone sang to me. I remember the phone calls, never just to talk, always with a request embedded in the second sentence. "Hey, Dad, how are you? Listen, my mower just died. Any chance I could borrow yours?" "Hi, Arthur, it's Karen. Hope you're well. Quick question. Are you free Saturday? We have a wedding to go to." I was a utility, a convenience, a piece of old, reliable furniture you keep in the garage until you need it. And tonight, they had left that piece of furniture at the stadium. The coffee was gone. I rinsed the mug and the percolator and put them away. I went into my small office, a room lined with books on history and woodworking. I sat at my desk. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper from the drawer and a pen. I wrote a single word at the top. List. The first item was simple. Bank. The second, lawyer. The third, locks. I looked at the list. It was short. It was clear. It was a plan. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was in the driver's seat of my own life. The feeling was unfamiliar. It was terrifying, and it was wonderful. I turned off the lights and went to bed. I did not check my phone for messages. I did not wonder if they would call again. I slept soundly. I did not dream. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The house was still. I made another single cup of coffee in the percolator. The ritual was now mine, and it was new. I dressed not in my usual worn jeans and flannel shirt, but in a pair of gray slacks and a pressed button-down. The clothes I wore to church, back when Eleanor was alive. The clothes I wore to funerals. It felt appropriate. Something was ending. First, the bank. It opened at 9. I was there at 5 minutes to. I walked in and asked for the manager. I had been banking there for 50 years. The manager, a young woman named Sarah, knew me by name. "Mr. Miller, good morning. What can we do for you?" I sat down at her desk. It was polished and neat. Nothing like my workbench. "I have a joint account with my son, Mark Miller," I began. "It was set up for emergencies," she nodded, typing on her computer. "Yes, I see it here. I would like to see the statement for the last 5 years," I said. "And I would like to close that account." Her fingers paused over the keyboard. She looked at me. There was a question in her eyes, but she was too professional to ask it. "Of course," she said. "And where would you like to transfer the remaining balance?" "I'll be opening a new account," I said, "solely in my name. And I want a new debit card. And I want to make sure my son's name is not attached to any of my other accounts. Not my savings, not my certificates of deposit. Nothing. It took an hour. I signed my name over and over again. My signature, once a strong, confident script, was a little shaky now. But today it felt powerful. Each signature was a brick in a new wall. While I waited for the paperwork, I looked through the statements from the joint account. It was all there in black and white. A death by 1,000 cuts. $20 here. Gas, $40 there. Groceries, $150. Emergency car repair. I remember that one. Mark had called in a panic. I'd told him to just use the card. I never saw a receipt. There were restaurant charges, movie tickets, online purchases I didn't recognize. It wasn't just for emergencies. It was a slush fund. My slush fund. I didn't feel anger. I just felt a profound sense of confirmation. The cold, hard clarity from the night before solidified into something like granite. I walked out of the bank with a new, crisp debit card in my wallet and a thick envelope of damning statements. The sun was bright. The air felt clean. My next stop was a hardware store. "Morning, Arthur," said Bill, the owner. "We've been members of the same VFW post for 20 years. "Morning, Bill. I need a new lock set for my front door." "And the back," he raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay?" "Just feel like a change," I said. He nodded, not pushing. He knew me well enough to know when a question wasn't welcome. He sold me 2 of the best deadbolts he had in stock. Heavy, brass, and complicated. "That'll keep the devil himself out," he said as he rang me up. "That's the idea," I replied. Back home, I changed the locks. It was a simple job. I had the right tools. My hands were steady. The familiar motions were comforting. Unscrewing the old hardware. Slotting the new cylinder into place. The satisfying click as the new bolt slid home. I held the new key in my palm. It was shiny and sharp. It felt good. I took the old keys, the ones Mark and Karen had, and I dropped them into the trash can. My last task for the morning was the phone call. I looked up the number in the phone book, an old habit. Albright and Associates. Estate law. A woman named Eleanor Albright had handled my will after my Eleanor died. Her daughter had since taken over the practice. Poetic in a way. I made an appointment for the following afternoon. Only then did I check my phone. 12 missed calls. 5 voicemails. A string of texts. "Dad, call me. This is not funny. We're coming over. Your phone is on. I can see it. Why aren't you answering? Karen is really upset. Arthur, for God's sake. Are you having some kind of episode? Do we need to call someone?" That last one was from Karen. The insinuation was clear. I wasn't making a choice. I was losing my mind. It was easier for them to believe I was senile than to believe I was holding them accountable. I deleted them all. The messages, the call logs, everything. I watched the screen go blank. It felt like wiping a dusty window clean. I spent the afternoon in my workshop. The smell of sawdust and old motor oil was my sanctuary. It was the one place that had always been truly mine. Mark had never shown much interest in it, beyond borrowing my tools and returning them broken or not at all. On the workbench was a small, intricate box I was building. Dovetail joints, inlaid wood. I had planned to give it to Leo for his high school graduation. I had another set of tools, antique chisels with rosewood handles, that I was restoring for him. I meant to give them to him with a box. I looked at the tools. They were beautiful. My father's father had been a cabinet maker in the old country. These were his tools, passed to my father, and then to me. I had kept them safe for a son who never wanted them, and for a grandson who might. I picked up a chisel. The weight was perfect in my hand. The edge was razor sharp. I had spent hours on it. Slowly, methodically, I took each chisel and placed it back into the leather roll. I put the roll back into my main toolbox, the heavy steel one that had been with me since my army days. They were not Leo's anymore. They were mine. The decision felt right. It felt clean. These tools were part of my history, my story. I wasn't ready to give that away. Not anymore. The doorbell rang later that afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole. It was Leo. He stood on the porch, shifting his weight from foot to foot. He looked nervous. He was alone. I hesitated. Was this a trick? Was he a Trojan horse, sent by his parents to get inside the walls? But then I looked at his face. There was no deceit there, just a deep, genuine shame. The same shame I'd seen in the faces of young soldiers who had made a mistake. I opened the door. "Grandpa," he said. His voice was quiet. "Can I come in?" I stepped back and let him pass. He walked into the living room and stood awkwardly in the middle of the rug. "I'm so sorry," he said, not looking at me. He was looking at the floor. "About the game. It was my fault, too. I was in the back. I had my headphones on. I didn't even think. But when we got home, I told them. I told them we had to go back. I yelled at them." He finally looked up at me. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "They didn't listen. Mom said you'd probably just get a cab and be dramatic about it. Dad just seemed annoyed," he confirmed it. He confirmed the laugh I heard, the attitude I sensed. He gave voice to the truth I already knew. I nodded slowly. "I got a cab," I said. "I know. I'm sorry," he shook his head. "It's not right. How they treat you." It was the first time anyone had ever said it out loud. It was a validation so profound it almost buckled my knees. He saw it. He saw me. "Come on," I said, my voice thick. "I'll make you a sandwich." We went into the kitchen. I pulled out the rye bread and the good deli mustard. I sliced turkey thin the way he liked it. We didn't talk. The silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, companionable. We sat at the small kitchen table, the one Eleanor and I had eaten 1,000 breakfasts at. We ate our sandwiches. I turned on the small radio on the counter to a baseball game, an afternoon game on the West Coast. The familiar crack of the bat and the low murmur of the crowd filled the room. "Did you change the locks?" Leo asked suddenly between bites. "I did," I said. He nodded, chewing thoughtfully. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. He understood. "Mom and Dad are freaking out," he said. "They tried to come over, but their key didn't work. Mom called me, asking if I knew what was going on." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I had no idea," he said. It wasn't a lie. He didn't know the details. He just knew the reason. "I'm not on their side in this, Grandpa. I want you to know that." "I know, son," I said. And I did. When he left an hour later, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't entirely alone in this new, strange country I was mapping out for myself. I had an ally. The next day, I went to see the lawyer. Ms. Albright's office was on the 7th floor of a downtown building. It was sterile and smelled of clean paper and faint perfume. She was a woman in her late 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She looked like her mother. "Mr. Miller," she said, shaking my hand. Her grip was firm. "Please have a seat. How can I help you?" I didn't waste time. I laid it all out. The stadium. The lifetime of being taken for granted. I didn't get emotional. I stated facts. I showed her the bank statements. She listened patiently, her face unreadable. She looked through the pages from the bank, her expression tightening just a little. "I see," she said when I was finished. "This is not uncommon, unfortunately. What is it you would like to do?" "I want to change my will," I said. "And I want to set up a living trust. I want to sell my house. And I want to make sure that when I die, my assets are protected." "Protected from whom?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "From my son and his wife," I said. For the next 2 hours, we worked. She was efficient, brilliant. She explained the difference between revoking a will and creating a trust. She talked about power of attorney, healthcare directives, beneficiaries. It was a whole new language, the language of control, the language of self-preservation. I had a simple pension from the phone company where I'd worked for 40 years, my military pension, and Social Security. I owned my house outright. It wasn't a fortune, but it was mine. I had built it, saved it, protected it. It was the sum total of my life's labor. My current will leaves everything split between my son, Mark, and my grandson, Leo, I explained. And the new one leaves my personal effects, my tools, my books, my father's watch, to Leo. It leaves a significant donation to my local VFW post. The rest, I paused. I want to set up a trust. The house will be sold, and the proceeds will be the basis of that trust. Leo will be the sole beneficiary. Ms. Albright wrote it all down. "Any conditions on the trust?" "Yes," I said. The money is for his education or to buy his first home. He cannot access the principal until he is 30 years old. And under no circumstances are his parents to be trustees or have any access to or control over the funds, she nodded. We can make that ironclad. I also had her draft a new healthcare directive and power of attorney. My previous one had named Mark. The new one named my friend from the VFW, Frank Peterson. Frank was a man I trusted with my life. We had served in the same theater, different years. He understood things Mark never could. I walked out of her office feeling 10 pounds lighter. The papers would take a week to draft, but the process was in motion. The gears were turning. That evening, they came. I heard the car pull up. I heard 2 doors slam. Then, the heavy, angry footsteps on my porch. A fist banged on the door. Not a knock. A bang. Dad, open this door. What the hell is going on? Mark's voice was tight with fury. I took a deep breath. I walked to the door. I did not look through the peephole. I knew who was there. I turned the new deadbolt. The click was loud and final. I opened the door. They stood there side by side. Mark's face was red, his jaw clenched. Karen stood slightly behind him, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of outrage and contempt. What is this? Mark demanded, gesturing at the door, the house, at me. You changed the locks? You don't answer your phone? We've been worried sick. You weren't worried, I said calmly. You were annoyed. There's a difference, Karen scoffed. Oh, here we go. Is this about the game? We said we were sorry, Arthur. It was a mistake. Are you going to punish us for the rest of our lives over one little mistake? It wasn't one little mistake, I said, my voice even. I looked directly at her. I heard you on the phone, Karen. I heard you laugh. Her face paled. For a second, she had nothing to say. The manufactured outrage vanished, replaced by the cold look of being caught. Mark stepped forward. This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. We're your family, are you? I asked. It was a genuine question, because for the last 10 years, it has felt more like I was your employee. An unpaid handyman and a walking ATM. A family doesn't leave one of its own at a stadium in the cold and then laugh about it. The truth of it hung in the air between us. It was ugly and undeniable. I'm selling the house, I said. The words dropped into the silence like stones. Mark stared at me, his mouth agape. You're what? You can't. This is the family home. It's my home. I corrected him gently. I paid for it. I maintained it. And I'm selling it. I've already spoken to a realtor. This was a small lie, but it would be true soon enough. And the joint account is closed, I continued. And my lawyer's drawing up a new will. The color drained from Mark's face. The anger was replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a dismantling. You can't do that, he stammered. The money, the house, that's our inheritance. And there it was. The heart of it all. Not concern for my well-being. Not love. But the cold, hard calculation of what they stood to lose. An inheritance is a gift, Mark, I said. It is not a right. You have received your gifts from me over the years. In cash, in labor, in time. The account is settled. Karen found her voice again. It was shrill. You are a cruel, bitter old man. After everything we've done for you, what have you done for me? I asked. Besides fit me into your schedule when you needed something? When was the last time you called just to see how I was? When was the last time you asked me what I wanted for dinner instead of telling me what you were making? Silence. They had no answer. I looked at my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the man who forgot me. I didn't feel hatred. I just felt a great, yawning sadness, a sense of loss for something that had died so long ago I hadn't even noticed until now. This conversation is over, I said. This is my life now. You're not a part of it in the same way. I suggest you get used to that. I started to close the door. Mark put his hand out to stop it. Dad, wait. I looked at his hand on my door. Then I looked at his face. Goodbye, Mark, I said, and I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it firmly and turned the deadbolt. The click echoed in the sudden quiet of my house. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. I could hear them outside, their voices low and angry. Then I heard their car doors slam again, and the sound of tires squealing as they drove away. And then silence. A deep, profound silence. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel victorious. I felt clean. The weeks that followed were a blur of methodical action. I called a realtor, a brisk woman who listed the house immediately. It sold in 3 days for more than I expected. The market was hot for well-maintained homes in established neighborhoods. All my years of pointless weekend chores had literally paid off. I signed the final papers with Ms. Albright, creating the trust and the new will. I called Frank and asked him to be my power of attorney. He just said, "Whatever you need, Art." You know that. I found a small, 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet complex across town. It was clean, modern, and anonymous. 1 bedroom for me, 1 for my workshop. It was all I needed. I started packing. Decades of my life, of Eleanor's life, of our life together, had to be sorted into boxes. Keep, donate, trash. It was a painful process. I found old photo albums. Mark as a baby. Family vacations to the Grand Canyon. Eleanor, young and beautiful, smiling at me from across a picnic blanket. I packed 1 small box of photos. The rest I left. The new owners could do with them what they wished. I was not taking ghosts with me. I packed my tools with care. My books, my father's watch, my armchair, the percolator, the rest of the furniture, the dishes Karen had bought us one Christmas, the endless collection of knickknacks. I called the charity and told them to come and take it all. Mark and Karen did not try to contact me again. I imagine Ms. Albright sent them a very pointed letter. Leo, however, came by every few days. He helped me pack. He never asked questions. He just lifted heavy boxes and listened to my stories when I felt like telling them. "This was your grandmother's favorite vase," I said one day, holding a piece of blue glass. "It's nice," he said. "She'd kill me if she knew I was giving it away." I chuckled. I placed it gently in the donate box. But she's not here, and I don't need it. On the last day, when the house was empty and echoing, Leo helped me with the final load. We stood in the empty living room for a moment. "You're going to be okay, Grandpa?" he asked. "I think so," I said. "I think I'm going to be better than okay." I gave him the new key to my apartment. "You're welcome anytime. Call first," he smiled. A real smile. My new life began. It was quiet. It was simple. I unpacked my boxes. I set up my workshop in the spare room. The smell of sawdust soon replaced the smell of new paint. I found a new rhythm. I woke up, made my coffee in the percolator, and read the paper. Some days I would go fishing with Frank. Other days I would work on a project in my shop. I was building a ridiculously elaborate birdhouse just because I could. I found a small diner nearby. I started going there for breakfast. After a week, the waitress, a young woman named Chloe with kind eyes, knew my order. "The usual, Arthur?" she'd ask. It was nice being Arthur. Not Dad, not Grandpa, not the old man. Just Arthur. I no longer felt invisible. I felt seen in small, quiet ways that mattered. The nod from the mailman, the wave from a neighbor, the simple transaction of being a person in the world, not a resource for a family. The ache in my chest, the one I had carried for so long I had forgotten it was there, was gone. I was no longer waiting. Waiting for a call. Waiting for a visit. Waiting for a crumb of acknowledgement. I was just living. One afternoon, a month after I moved, a letter arrived. It was forwarded from my old address. The handwriting on the envelope was Mark's. Awkward, like a boy's. I held it in my hand. It felt heavy. I could feel the weight of everything it might contain. Apologies. Accusation. Excuses. A plea. I walked in my new, clean kitchen. I placed the letter on the counter, next to the small radio that was playing a ball game. I looked at it for a long moment. Then, I turned away. I went into my workshop. I picked up a piece of fine-grained maple. I switched on the radio in there to a station that played old country music. Johnny Cash was singing about a man who walked the line. The wood was smooth under my fingers. I had a plan for it. A new project. Something for me. The letter could wait. Maybe I would open it tomorrow. Maybe next week. Maybe never. For the first time in a very long time, the choice was entirely mine. And that was a freedom more valuable than any inheritance. It was a peace more profound than any apology. I was no longer forgotten, because I had finally remembered myself.